This is the Syrn Media Information Panel. Thank you so much for joining. Today we have the Writers Lab. We will begin momentarily. Hi, Elizabeth, Nitza, how are you?
Hi, great.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to learn more about the Writers Lab. Would you mind please just introducing yourselves and your roles within the Writers Lab?
Nitza, you're mute, so I'm going to take over for you. I'm Elizabeth. That's Nitza. We're joined at the hip when it's not a pandemic. We co-founded the Writers Lab with a third partner named Kaiden Stokes in 2015 officially, but we came up with the idea with it before that when we were working together. Nitza and I were working together as co-writers on some screenplays. And we were frustrated by the lack of opportunity to get real development support in general, and maybe particularly for our cohort of women over 40. And so we came up with this idea and to create a lab to do just that. And we went to New York Women in Film and Television to ask if they wanted to join us. And we partnered and launched, and there we have it.
Wow, Nitza, is there anything you'd like to add to how you guys came to be at the Writers Lab and to
No, that was pretty good. I was just going to discuss our roles. As co-founders of a very small operation, we are also, let's see, I'm webmaster. I am reader, thousands and thousands of scripts. I am letter writer. I am, what other things are we? We wear a lot of hats.
We wear a lot of hats. We do our own legal and financial. We do our own
letter writer.
Yes, applications and script assessments, and we do a lot of follow-up support with our alumni as well.
Those are a lot of hats to be wearing, but I'm sure you do them well. Can you share just a little bit about how that partnership with NIWIF came to be, the history and the mission around the Writers Lab?
So the mission was to change the world, obviously, that's always the mission. But, we decided to just take on what we knew, which is women over 40 being sort of invisible, specifically on film. And we felt like film was a great way to disseminate our secret mission. People watch film, a lot of people watch film, and it has a lot of impact on people. So when we went to NIWIF, we really thought it was a great organization, that it made sense for us to join with NIWIF, to ask for their help, just to remain, sort of a nonprofit, make it a, meaningful mission. And there was one thing
I'm going to jump in for a minute. Yeah, I'm going to add. Yeah. So in 2014, 2015, when we were developing this idea, we were just ahead of the sort of avalanche of press and consciousness raising around the gender inequities in the film industry. But we were aware of it. And so we launched this really to draw attention to that. And also because while film is primarily a director-driven medium, we're writers, and we believe very deeply in the role of the writer, the role of really sophisticated, thoughtful, skilled writing in crafting the template that is required to build a great story on that plays on screens. And so we particularly wanted to highlight the role of the writer, as well as of women and their stories in the industry. And so NIWIF was already doing this as an advocacy organization for women, both in film and in television and other media. So they seemed like a natural ally for us.
That sounds great. I mean, at the end of the day, there is no project without some form of written word for it to begin with. And so the role of the writer cannot be underestimated. Can you talk about the types of projects that you're looking to support for the Writers Lab? You spoke to the mission for women over 40. What types of projects are you looking to support?
Well, it's all narrative fiction. I mean, we're looking for fiction. And we are not, we're sort of like, I was thinking earlier today, we're sort of like American Idol, you know, we're sort of really open to people just coming in and saying, you know, I think I can sing, or I think I can write. Now, on the other hand, we also very much invite people who have had professional careers as screenwriters. Maybe their career has been stalled. Maybe they never got traction after all these years. So it's really, there's a wide range of people and projects we're looking at. And again, back to the question of the script as opposed to the writers, we are open to everything, really every genre. I know that, you know, I have some favorites, Elizabeth has some favorites, but we're very, very open. We're very, very eager. Not just features. Obviously, this year we opened up to pilots.
Before we segue to pilots, I'll just say for the first 6 years that we were open to features only, we really do in that final selection round, we sort of look at the array of scripts that have made it to that round, most of which are pretty well written already and pretty great and compelling and important stories already. And we really look for a diverse set of genres, voices, types of characters. I mean, obviously, uh, screenplays that have women characters or characters that tell a story, particularly through a female lens, really jump out for us because that's certainly part of our mission, but it's not exclusively our mission. And we're looking for what women have to say on a wide variety of subjects and people and forms and formats and genres and tones and types and all that stuff.
It's interesting that you actually haven't just simply limited to only female stories and that you are that open. And in line with expanding, what was the motivation behind expanding to include series pilots this year?
Elizabeth?
It's been on our agenda for a while, and it's been a question of bandwidth, financially and otherwise, in order to do it. But clearly, especially with the pandemic, but even without the pandemic, the um, the industry is shifting, not just from traditional cinema going to streaming, but also to really those barriers between different formats sort of breaking down. And it became clear that if we limit ourselves to features, we are shutting doors to the very population we want to open doors for, because they need to be able to write as they need to be as agile as possible in writing for different formats and for different distribution platforms. And so it seemed necessary. And we're really excited about it.
That's amazing. Can you speak to the other parts of the program itself, the mentorship, the career training elements, given that you are trying to support a wide range of people? You've spoken about the variety of, you know, the applicants you'd like to see in terms of genres that they're writing for or career level. But once they join the program, what's the mentorship and career training element going to be like?
Well, you know, I always say the first step is community. The first step is establishing this community and encouraging the community to grow and thrive. And then the mentorship is another aspect of that community. You know, as you might know already, we find women in the film industry who are excellent at what they do, have gotten a certain amount of traction, and we have them meet with our writers one-on-one, in groups, in all kinds of shapes and sizes, over mealtime, when we're in person. So that's the mentorship. What was the other part of that question? There was the mentor.
I'll add to the other part. Actually, I want to add two things to the other parts. So there's one-on-one script development between a writer and a mentor. Usually we team up each writer with two different mentors, a writer and a producer, who will give different kinds of feedback on her project. So there's that kind of individual work on the project. But then there's all of this, not just informal chat, which definitely happens and is fantastic when we can be in person over meals and in the hallways and whatever else. But we also have sort of formal panels and workshops and discussion groups to support the development of pitching skills, to talk very candidly and openly about how the industry works and how to navigate it as a woman over 40. And also within some of those discussions and also within our selection process, I want to be sure that the Syrn audience in particular knows. We also do, we're looking for not just a diversity of genres and types of projects, but of types of writers as well. All races, all cultural backgrounds, all identifiers, abilities, gender associations. We're looking to bring new voices that have not been heard in the traditional industry to the table and bring their projects to light.
Mm. You know, speaking about bringing in increased diversity in that way, there may be a gap in the level of experience because of the lack of diversity support that there's been in years prior. So are you open to all of those experience levels?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
we are. You know, it's a competitive application process. It's a competitive selection process. So the truth is that a writer needs to have some facility with words and some knowledge of screencraft and a pretty strong understanding of her story and her vision and the ways to tell it. That said, we've had novices and we've had, you know, professional screenwriters who have had projects made, both attending the lab at the same time in the same class. There is not enough support to get more women to the level where they can really, where their work shines in a competitive selection process. But we are trying to aid that. And one way that we do that is we take the reading and evaluation process very seriously. We have a large cohort of readers, many of whom have been working with us for years, and we train to look for what we look for, which is what is the voice behind the words? What does it seem to say in the words that it's put on the page about what it wants to do here, about the story it has to tell and how it would tell it? And does this seem like there's enough skill and knowledge here that we can work with taking this writer's project to the next level? There is a fair amount of support, but this is not, sadly, because we just can't do it. It's not really a screenwriting workshop. We don't teach screenwriting. We work with individuals and their projects on reaching the next level with their work and also with their ability to take that work out. We also do a lot of discussion in our workshops about sort of self-advocacy and self-producing, or building a project into a package that can then be taken to a producer who can see how to produce it. That kind of thing is also a type of support that we feel is really valuable.
That is valuable. And actually around the idea of mentors who are able to speak to the diverse array of women who you'll have in the program, can you give some examples of past mentors you've had in the program and talk a little bit about the kind of expertise filmmakers can expect from those mentors?
You go.
Of our mentors. Do you want to take this or do you want me to?
You go ahead.
We've had wonderful mentors. We have wonderful mentors. Many are repeats. We try to bring in some new ones each year just to keep things mixing things up. As I said, we try to go halvesies on the producers and the writers. So we have writers who have worked in, Pixar story development. We have writers, this year we had Rita Shao, who wrote Toy Story 2, and we have had Pamela Gray, who wrote Walk on the Moon and a couple of others. We've had Lisa Jones, who worked with Spike Lee. And then on the producer side, we have some pretty amazing women from Susan Kartsonis has been with us since the early years, Mary Jane Skalski. We've had Lisa Cortez, who does some amazing work both in docs and features. I can name more, they're all on our website. They each bring something different. We have writer mentors who will speak deeply and about craft. It's really terrific to listen to them talk about how they view a story arc. Robin Swycord on a story arc is an amazing thing to hear. We also have producer mentors who can speak very candidly and do about many of the big players out there in the film industry and what it's like to work with them, and who is approachable and who is not approachable. And that's really valuable as well.
Amazing. This is a different year, and we can't not allude to that. So I'd like for you to tell me a little bit about how maybe the pandemic has altered the nature of the lab.
It's virtual. It's really interesting. I have to say the 2020 was a real test of our mettle. And I feel like we have been validated in every conceivable way. This notion that, that people past a certain age are unbendable, unadaptable. We adapted, we expanded, we had a great lab in October. It was virtual. We missed a lot of stuff, but we pivoted. We just brought in a lot more people because they were available. And so we just pivoted, and we tried to keep it alive and warm and connected. And I mean, we also had an amazing class. I think maybe because of the pandemic, the 12 women built a relationship in the weeks before the lab. So they came into the lab already bonded. And that, I mean, I thought it was incredible. I do crave a real life experience, but if it has to be virtual, I'm all right.
And this opens doors, I'm sure this is true for a lot of different organizations and businesses moving forward. One of the things that we've all been learning over the last year from working remotely is that there are elements of remote work that enhance in-person work and vice versa. And so we're going to be thinking creatively, we hope, as we move forward about how to use the opportunities available through everything.
Amazing. This sounds phenomenal. And watching programs pivot and take the best of digital to see how it will affect the in-person, I think is really, like you said, going to help just move everyone forward.
It's fabulous because as my bottom spreads from all this sitting, nobody sees it. The best. The best.
That is a pro. So for those who are listening and they're really interested in applying at this point, what application materials are needed for them to apply to this opportunity?
Submissions guru.
The application is pretty straightforward. It's basic contact and biographical information. There are a couple of very short answer questions that we don't look at anything that the filmmaker submits, that the writer submits, unless they make it to the very final round, except the script. So absolutely the most important advice I can give anybody who is interested in applying is, before you submit, make sure your script is as good as it can be. And that means make sure that you open strong, grab your reader, tell your reader what this story is about, and make your reader want to keep reading. Check for typos, check for errors, check for, I don't know, spelling mistakes. Not because they're important in terms of making a great film, but they are important in terms of getting through a competitive selection process. The script is all, as far as we're concerned. Nitza has a wonderful, I'm going to hand it over to you. When you read a script, what you see about the writer.
What do I see? Oh, what do I see? No, you tell me.
And I'm going to paraphrase Nitza really badly, but she likes to say that when she reads a script, you can see, and I think she's right. You can see the writer's imprint or signature on every page in terms of how she tells her story, in terms of how she introduces a sentence. And that's not something to be afraid of. That's something to be proud of. But introduce your very best, the very best version of that imprint when you submit your script. Make sure it's what you really want it to be.
The other thing that we always say, just sort of aside from a very specific project that someone is submitting, that I think one of the best ways to train yourself is to read good scripts, because you can't beat it. You just can't beat it. You just
I
see it.
agree with that. Yeah.
You see what it feels. You see the difference when you're reading a script that is alive on the page, that moves, where you care about people, where you hear what they're saying, and then you go, oh, that's it. Oh, it's really helpful. Great.
Yeah, there's nothing like having to do coverage of a script that you are like drained reading versus one that brings you alive and helps you to look at yourself more. And such a valuable point to that your fingerprint is really in your writing on each page. So it's a beautiful, beautiful point.
Also,
Uh,
know thyself. Just one more thing, know thyself. It really helps to know, to be self-aware, to know what your prejudices are, to know what your blind spots are. And it's symbiotic. You know, you sort of learn by watching how you write, if you're able. It's a fascinating thing.
Truly. Can
Me.
you guys speak to some of the success stories from the Writers Lab and just people who've come through the program, been accepted? How's it moved their careers forward and really progressed them?
It's definitely some have and some haven't, to be very, very blunt. Um, uh, it really, you have to keep working. This People don't come out of the lab necessarily with a production deal. If not even necessarily, they just don't. That's not what the lab is. It's a writing lab. And so you really have to get out and hustle. You have to continue to hustle. What you come out with is you come out with a community, you come out with support, you come out with a better script, you come out knowing what's working for you as a writer and what's not, and what you need to work, to make better. We've had, I think this year, finally, after what, 7 years, finally, I believe for certain, have one alumni releasing a film, and maybe two. Um, and oh boy, our alum have gone on to get writing jobs all over the
I
place.
can give you just a couple of concrete examples. We do have our first actual Writers Lab film coming to screens this year. It's called The Retreat. It's by Alison Richards, who's a Canadian. It's a horror film. It's fantastic. It's lots of fun. She knew when she was accepted to the lab that she was producing this film herself, and she had produced others, and so she was sort of coming to get her script to where she wanted it to be to head into production. So it's not that she got a production deal out of the lab. As Nitza said, this really is about the writing. But we do have a couple of writers who have come through the lab and headed into a bunch of meetings with producers. We know of at least, I know I can't remember the number, but we're up to like 7 or 8 writers. We just heard from one more who, since attending the lab, have signed on with managers or agents who are now taking their work out. We have a couple who have signed on with managers who have agreed to help them produce their films. So we are looking forward to more like Allison in the years to come. And mostly even those who do not end up with a real concrete professional
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, they come out with this cohort that helps them figure out what they should write next. Sometimes they co-write a project next. We have a couple of pairs of co-writer teams now who are alumni of the labs. They definitely move their projects further along, but also start new projects. We have we have one of our early year writers who's now in her second writer's room through a contact she made at the lab. So it does happen.
And we do ask our writers every year. We give them, I guess, 3 months to turn in to us, and to follow up mentors. We ask them to turn in a new draft, which we read and make notes on. So we push them to continue.
Accountability, and because writing can be such a solitary part of the process of the filmmaking process. Having accountability is huge, and I can see that as being just very largely beneficial for writers. And as we see a greater push in the industry for gender diversity and just greater equity in general, I think programs like yours are going to be real game changers. And I certainly appreciate the work that you are doing. And I also appreciate you taking your time to join us today to give our listeners and viewers some more information on the Writers Lab. And I certainly hope that you receive plenty of applications from, at the very least, from our audience. And I want to just thank you so much for sharing about the Writers Lab.
It was a pleasure. It was lovely to be here. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you. It was really, this was fun.